Wookiees. A race so famous, we're willing to bet even non-Star Wars fans have heard of them. One of the most beloved characters in the franchise, Chewbacca, was the ambassador for the Wookiee race, which quickly became extremely popular among fans. Since their first appearance in Episode 4, more and more Wookiees have joined the cast of characters throughout the Star Wars media, to the delight of many. But what many may not realize is that these strong, loyal beings were far more than just trusty co-pilots or renegade bounty hunters. Wookiees had a darker, more violent side that many didn't get to see, or only got to see once. In this video, we're going to talk about the more sinister side of Wookiees and what made them a true horror if you caught them on a bad day.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Wookiees were a bipedal humanoid species native to the forest planet Kashyyyk. Their most recognizable feature was their long, shaggy fur that covered them from head to toe, and their immense stature. They grew up to 2.5 meters tall, or about 8 feet, and weighed up to 150 kilograms, or 330 pounds. In their native language, the Wookiees called themselves the people of the trees, and they lived up to their name by housing their communities and cities inside the Roshir trees that reached enormous heights on their arboreal world. Entire communities lived in one massive trunk alone, and Wookiees built cities like the capital of Wookoro by constructing wooden platforms along the interlocking branches of neighboring trees. The Roshir weren't just the hearts of their communities, however. Roshir wood was integral in Wookiee traditional carving. They utilized every part of the tree to meet their everyday needs. They fashioned the wood into weapons and furniture, derived food and medicine from the sap, and made textiles and utensils from the bark and leaves. Wookiees were renowned craftsmen, famed for their ability to blend modern technology with their traditional wood carving. One such example was their unique weapons, the bowcasters, which were a type of single-fire laser crossbow. Even though they had access to unique weapons, however, Wookiees didn't strictly need them as they possessed immense physical strength. As Han Solo wrote in the Imperial Handbook, A Commander's Guide, Wookiees were strong enough to rip a stormtrooper's head off even with their helmet fastened. Despite this, they generally avoided fights. Even when engaging in a public argument, Wookiees postured with stomps and bellows rather than escalating things into a physical fight. Whoever made the most formidable impression was declared the victor. Unlike their Trandoshan neighbors, Wookiees weren't a warlike people. On the contrary, they were regarded as calm, gentle, and mild-mannered creatures. Wookiee society placed great emphasis on those traits that separated them from the beasts. They lived by a strict code of honor, and failing to uphold it bore serious consequences. As a society, Wookiees placed a great deal of value on maintaining their civility. They were intelligent and sophisticated beings, and virtues such as loyalty, friendship, honor, and bravery were the heart of their society, as they were considered what elevated them above the common beast. When peaceful, they were gentle, even tender. Acts such as grooming one another were common displays of affection. All these traits made Wookiees loyal and dependable friends. It did not, however, mean that they were always that good-natured. On the contrary, Wookiees had a darker side to them that was in stark contrast to their usual temperament. We've already established that Wookiees were calm, gentle people, and this was true for the most part. That changed, however, the moment they were provoked. A Wookiee that was provoked, whether the offense was serious or not, often erupted into a fiery fury that could range anywhere from a temper tantrum to a berserker rage. The danger lay in that they had particularly short fuses and were very easy to set off by even the slightest of things. Even among themselves, public arguments sometimes escalated into physical violence despite the general rule of posturing. Sometimes, if the crowd of onlookers goaded the participants, the otherwise harmless display could escalate into a physical fight. This wasn't the only example of petty spitefulness resulting in violence, however. Wookiees were known to be extremely sore losers. Losing a bet or a game elicited many reactions, from upset bellowing to chest pounding to indiscriminate violence, which was by no means limited to ripping someone's arm off. "It's not wise to upset a Wookiee," Han Solo quipped when C-3PO and R2-D2 were beating Chewbacca at Dejarik. Many considered it a smarter choice to simply let the Wookiee win rather than risk dismemberment. But even outside of losing, Wookiees were very short-tempered and quick to escalate to violence when offended and irritated. Another example of this in canon comes from the Book of Boba Fett. In Episode 4, Black Krrsantan attacked a Trandoshan who had been gambling with their friend in the Sanctuary Cantina. The Trandoshan didn't address or look at the Wookiee, but Black Krrsantan's hatred for the Trandoshan race, his own experience with slavers, and the fact that he had been drinking were enough to set the Wookiee off. Despite Garsa Fwip's best attempts at reasoning with him, he still tore the lizard's arm off and threw both limb and reptile onto the floor before storming out. For more serious insults or upsets, Wookiees flew into berserker rages that wouldn't end until the target of their fury had been trampled into the ground to their satisfaction. First, they charged their target head-on, then they used their bare fists to pummel them into submission or rip them into pieces. This use of indiscriminate violent force was so infamous that it sprouted a unique expression in deal slang, the language used by swindlers and gamblers. Thus, Wookienate became a slang term for using excessive force to render an opponent harmless. All these displays of petty rage may have earned the Wookiees the galaxy's fearful respect, but they didn't stop Wookiees from being generally viewed as a peaceful and benevolent race. Their tempers were simply a natural part of their behavior, and the galaxy knew to just avoid upsetting them. Unfortunately for the galaxy, there was another side to the Wookiees that wasn't part of their natural behavior. That side was feral and stained with blood. We've already established that Wookiees placed great importance on civility. This was considered so important that they developed their code of conduct to ensure they behaved like intelligent, sophisticated beings instead of beasts. One aspect of this code was the strict restrictions it placed on their claws. Wookiees were born with claws, but they were raised to view them as tools of their trade and not of violence. They were explicitly forbidden from using them in combat for any reason. Any Wookiee that failed to uphold this tenet in their code of honor was considered to have gone mad and lost their social self, as they could clearly not restrain their inner animal. These were the Madclaws, Wookiees deemed feral and a danger to society. Madclaws were unanimously exiled from their tribes and banished to the Shadowlands, the Forest Floor of Kashyyyk, or off-world. The title was one of great dishonor, so much so that other Wookiees were tasked with hunting and killing them in order to restore the honor of their race. One of the most famous Madclaws was Zalbar, a Wookiee who assisted the Sith Lord Revan in his mission to destroy the Starforge during the Jedi Civil War. Zalbar was cast out of his tribe and labeled a Madclaw when he fought with his brother, Chunda, and used his claws during the fight. The reason behind the fight didn't matter to his tribe. The mere fact that he had used his claws was enough to earn him his exile. Unlike most other Madclaws, however, Zalbar was able to return to his homeworld while traveling with Revan in search for the star maps and clear his name. The title of Madclaw was later rescinded and he reclaimed his honor. But perhaps the most notorious of all the Madclaws, and the Wookiee who best exemplifies the violent tendencies associated with that title, was Hanha. We've talked about Hanha before on this channel, but for those who haven't watched that video, here's a quick rundown of his story. Ever since he was born, Hanha was different. Where other Wookiees cared about their image and social values, Hanha cared about the hunt. From a young age, he descended to the Shadowlands and hunted beasts indiscriminately. He killed for the sake of killing, and he enjoyed it. It was this bestial bloodlust that eventually led his tribe to exile him, forever marking him as a Madclaw. Hanha took this in stride and continued his slaughter across Kashyyyk. He had surpassed the Wookiees' inhibitions and fully embraced his impulses. His path soon took a turn for the worst, however, when Zerka Corporation arrived on the planet and enslaved the natives. Having seen what Zerka did to their slaves, shackling them and stripping them of their honor, Hanha took it upon himself to spare his tribe from what was to come. He did this by slaughtering them in their sleep, each and every one of them. Hanha murdered his entire tribe in cold blood. His murderous rampage didn't end there, however. In retaliation for this damage to their profit margins, Berserker enslaved him and sent him to Nar Shaddaa, where he broke free and continued his murder spree, only this time with a new target: humanity. Hanhar's mission in life became the torture and extermination of humanity in his quest for vengeance. This was a Madclaw at their worst: violent, murderous, and remorseless. This is what Wookiees could truly become if they abandoned their morals and restraints and embraced their feral side. This was the Wookiees' true sinister side, and one even they themselves feared, for good reason. So what do you think? Would you ever gamble with a Wookiee, or would you keep them at arm's length? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.